So today is week 11. It's our last actual lesson in COMP3025, Mobile and Pervasive Computing. A couple of items I just wanted to touch on before we dive into things today. Number one, it's been pointed out to me, I am aware, unfortunately, the WebEx recording died for part 2 last week. So unfortunately, I do not have a recording for part 2. But there's not really very much I can do about it at this point, unfortunately. Second thing that came up, I want to talk a little bit about the assignment. I want to talk about a few things. As a few students have pointed out to me, there are some issues when we deploy, interacting with Firebase when we deploy our apps to the Play Store. The authentication seems to work, but the actual creating and reading of data does not. I've been trying to sort this out. This has something to do with, Google's made some changes. It has something to do with the app signing and the digital signature. I've been through a number of potential fixes, none of which have seemed to work yet. So what are we going to do in terms of your assignment? Because I'm asking you to deploy it to the store and it has to interact with Firebase. We've got two options. I'm going to continue to try and find a solution to this. If I find something that's working, I will record a video as to how to fix it. And if I can do that in a timely manner, then I would be expecting you to apply that fix to your final project, to your release. If, on the other hand, I'm not able to do that in a timely manner, then yes, I will still want to ensure that you deploy your app to the store. But in terms of running it, I will actually run it locally from your Git repository, which I'm going to be downloading anyway to check your source code. So if I find a solution and post it, then I would expect that you incorporate that solution into the assignment. If I don't do that in time, then I'm obviously not going to penalize you for an issue that I have not shown you how to correct. Does that sound fair? Okay, thank you. So the problem, I believe, has to do with the digital signature of our app. So when we create the bundle in Android Studio, it's generating a signing key. The problem is when we created the app in the dashboard under app signing, the Play console now wants to sign the apps themselves. So the fingerprint is different. So one of the suggested fixes was to take the fingerprint from the Play console. And I tried this, but it still didn't work. Go into the Firebase project settings, add the Play Store's fingerprint, and then re-download the new Google Services.json that includes the new fingerprint, and then create a new bundle, new release. I've tried this. It still has not resolved the issue. Not as far as I know, Misam, not from an app that's actually deployed to the Play Store. If anybody has deployed their app already to the store and can run it on an actual device and read and save data, then please contact me because I'm curious how you did it. So the authentication works. So it can connect to Firebase for authentication, but it doesn't seem to for reading and writing data. And I think it's related to the signing certificate. Yeah, if I run my app from Android Studio, it can connect to Firebase, it can read and write. But when I update my Restorator in the Play Store and run it on my actual phone, it crashes when I try to read or write to Firebase, even though I can log in through Firebase, which is a little bit strange. And this is a known issue. I've seen a number of suggested fixes. I've yet to see a fix that works. So if I find a fix that works, I will record how to fix it, and I will send that out to everybody. So please don't ignore any emails you might get from me over the next couple of weeks. Okay, if I don't find a working fix, yeah, so the issues are going to be related. There's something to do with the digital signature when we deploy to the Play Store that's not allowing us to talk to Firebase. So I will work on that. If I find a solution and share it with you, then you'll be expected to include that in your assignment. If I don't find a solution soon, then I will just run everybody's app locally. But I do still want to make sure you have at least deployed it to the Play Store. The other issue that came up, some students have asked about the possibility of extending the due date for assignment 3. So the assignment would not be due next Thursday before your final exam. I'm willing to consider that, but I'd like to know if we extend the due date, I would like to make the due date before the 18th, because these assignments, we have a big class. They're going to take a long time to mark. I have to get the final grades in early in the following week. And ideally, I'd like to have your grades back to you for the Friday the 18th, in 2 weeks for our last class. I'd like to have your exams marked and your apps marked. So our last class is relaxed. You can come and everybody's already got their grade. So I'm willing to consider pushing the due date for assignment 3 until sometime after the exam. But I'm sort of thinking something like Monday or Tuesday, like the 14th or 15th. I'm willing to have a conversation around it if there's any thoughts or opinions, and you guys get a say because you're the ones who bothered to show up to class today. Okay. Doesn't matter. Now, one thing that there is one kind of caveat. I'm willing to extend assignment 3, but one thing you'll have to appreciate is I'm not going to have much availability for last minute help or office hours if I give you those few days. Because probably over the weekend, I'm going to start marking your exams that we get next Friday. And then I have to proctor an exam Monday and proctor an exam on Tuesday. So I'm willing to give you some time on those days, but I'm really not going to be available to provide help at that point. Okay, so if our final class is on the 18th, tell you what, I will extend the due date until the Tuesday, the 15th. We'll make it 5 p.m. because that will give me 2.5 days to get through everybody's. I also have another exam on the Wednesday. So I may even be able to start marking them on the Tuesday night. Okay, so if I move it to 5 o'clock on Tuesday, you get 5 extra days. Basically, you'll finish your exam because it was supposed to be due next Thursday at 5. So your exam ends next Friday at 2. And then you basically have 4 days plus 3 more hours. You have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday until 5 p.m. How do people feel about that? Tuesday, 5 p.m. Okay, that's one yes. Any other thoughts about that new due date, Tuesday, December 15th at 5? Okay, thank you for the feedback. All right, so I will update that on Blackboard right now. One thing at a time, Lily. One thing at a time. So we will change the due date for the final assignment to the 15th. At 5. And I'll update the document as well, just so there's no confusion. And then we will talk about the final exam. Okay, I will also just put out an announcement for the students that are not here, which disappointingly is about 2/3 of the class. Okay. So yes, I do want to talk about the final exam. So our final exam is going to be next Friday at 11 a.m. The exam will be all practical. Okay, so there's no question and answer. There's no quizzes. You will have to, in 3 hours, build an app. You do not need to deploy it to the store. You're going to be doing your deployment for assignment 3. Okay. Actually, that is one other condition we'll have to talk about. What I should have you do, because the deployment takes time for your assignment, you should create your deployment before the 15th. Because if you don't upload it to the Play Store, the initial review takes longer because you have to go and get a content rating, and that can take 24 or 48 hours. So I'm going to ask, I'll send out another note about this. I'm going to ask you to at least deploy an initial version of your app. It's not the one I'm going to mark, but you should be deploying an initial version of the app earlier than Tuesday the 15th. So you can go through the steps, the release steps, and get a content rating. So you're not going to have to deploy the app, but it's going to use Firebase. And in general, anything we've covered in the course I could ask you to include, and that includes anything from today's lesson. So that means intents, layout, working with Firebase, authentication, navigation, camera, map. Those would be basically all of the elements we've done during the course. Normally in a final exam, I focus more heavily on the second part of the course, but that's because we've had a midterm exam. We skipped the midterm exam, so content from the first part of the course is still going to be included in the assessment. So in short, Lily, basically everything other than deployment could be in the exam. Okay? Okay, one other thing just before we go back to starting with our app and what we want to cover today is have a look, log into the Google Play console and see if you deployed your app last week. You should see by now your app should probably be published. You would have gotten an email in regards to your content rating for your app. And it should actually be published and should show you what date your release is. And then you should be able to see it in the store now. Did anybody get an email confirmation from Google about their content rating and has been able to find their app in the store? If you click on your app, it will show you a link to where it is in the store. So you should get a view on Google Play. And your release should be here. So Misam, you said your app is in the store. Is anyone else's in the store? Okay, so Misam's app is here. That's great. Okay, excellent. Lalit, what's the name of your app if we look for it? Still in review. Okay. All right, so not there yet. So it's important for your final assignment. I'm not going to be able to see the deployment. If you don't deploy it until the last day and I go to mark it that night, it's not going to be there. So you'll need to make sure that you deploy a little bit earlier and at least go through your initial content review. Okay, so here's what we're going to do today. We want to look at integrating an external app on the device. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that. I do. I'm doing my best. I acknowledge that I don't know Android as well as I would like to. This is the third time I've taught the class. Every time I learn a little bit more. I'm not as comfortable with the technology as with some of the other things I'm teaching. But yeah, I'm trying, and I do appreciate also everybody's patience and understanding when with some of my hiccups and also some of the support and suggestions and fixes I've gotten from you guys. I really appreciate that. So thank you. So we want to look at integrating our camera and the device storage today. We want to take a photo, and then we also need to be able to store the photo on the device. So this is going to require us to use some permissions that our app needs the user permission in order to function. And then once we can get we're going to kind of do this in two phases. First, we want to take a photo. Actually, I guess three phases. We want to take a photo. We want to display the photo in the app. Once we can do those things, the first part, the photo won't persist. So if we leave the app and come back, the photo's not going to still show up. Eventually, our last step is we also want to persist the photo to Firebase. So we can also save it, attach a path to that photo into Firebase, and then when the user logs in and goes back to their profile, we can automatically select and display their profile image. So we got to jump through a number of hoops to make this work. We're going to have to explore permissions by enabling them in the manifest. We also need to set a file provider. So we need to declare where our app is going to save and read files from. So we'll have to create a little XML resource file for that. On our activity, we're going to bake this into the profile activity. So we've got some white space in there. So we're going to add a little camera button. And then when the user clicks it, we need to request permissions to use the camera as well as to use the device storage. When we get those permissions, we're going to use an intent. And that intent type is going to be an image capture. And that intent uses an extra, which is the URI to an image file. So a universal locator that will find that image on the device. We can evaluate if our intent is successful. And if it is, we want to display the image in the image view and save it to a device. So that's kind of the first step. And then afterwards, we're going to want to also persist that photo to the user's Firebase profile and load it whenever the user goes to their profile. So I've put up a couple of links here, a couple of things we're going to need to do in our Android manifest. We're going to need to add this uses feature tag. So this tells our app what hardware features are required by the app. So if we set the feature to true, it means any device that doesn't have that feature can't run our app. So for example, any Android device without a camera won't be able to use the app. So we're going to declare that our app uses the camera feature. And then we also have uses permissions. So, and what this looks like, this does a couple of things. So in the Play Store, for example, let me just pull up an app in the Play Store. Okay, maybe not this one. Let's pick another one. In the description in the Play Store, we can see what other apps we have to give permission to. And then we get, when a user goes to use that feature for the first time, they get prompted with a permission. You know, this app is requesting permission to access your camera or your contacts or your phone. So that's what we're defining with this uses permission tag. So it'll check the app permissions and prompt the user, asking them whether prompt the user to allow or deny permission to those features. So we're going to use both of those. So I've also included a link here to this tutorial. This is a simple tutorial about taking a photo and displaying it in the app. So I've kind of adapted this, but there's no persistence here. And this tutorial's current. It's from October. So it shows how to take a photo, also how to select photo from a gallery. We're going to leave that out just in the interest of time. And it's got little code snippets here on Gist. So it shows, we've got a little app where we can take a photo, ask for permissions, and it's going to render the photo into our image view. So I've kind of adapted this for our first part, and then we're integrating the Firebase piece second. So what does this look like? I'll just show you kind of what our end product is, because again, this was one of the things students asked for a while ago. So if I sign in here, I'll actually just make a new user. So this is my test app. So when I sign in, I'm going to go to the profile activity. And I've got a little camera button here. So this brings up the emulator camera. And I can use my mouse and the Alt button and move around. There's a lovely photo of some pot lights in the ceiling. So when I save it, it now displays that photo in the image view. But it's also persisted this photo to my Firebase profile. So if I navigate, leave the form, come back, it's still here. And if I log out entirely of the app and sign back in, okay, I don't remember that. I guess I typed in the password wrong. I'll load in, use one of my other accounts that I've already tested this with. So I'd saved a different photo here as user 2. So this is what we want to accomplish today. Take a picture, render a picture, save it to permanent storage, and then attach that also to Firebase. When the user logs in, we grab that URI, and again, we grab the photo out of storage and render it in the image view. So this is kind of our end product of what we want to accomplish today. So please open up. Let's open up our Restorator app. I've already got mine open, and we can get started. There's one other quick link I want to show you, just to prevent confusion in the future. So we're going to use for today, this is from the official docs, we're going to use the camera class. So if we go into the Android docs about taking photos, they have a tutorial here that uses the camera class, which has been deprecated. And they're recommending using the Camera X or Camera 2. We're going to stick with the camera. For today, we're going to use the older one. I have found Camera 2 in playing around, even though it says API 21 or higher, it works better on Android 30 and above, which is really new. And our app is not set for that version of Android, right? We're compiling for 29. So even though the version of the camera we're using here is a little bit older, I'm going to stick with it. I found working with Camera 2 was a bit of a nightmare, so we're just going to stick with the older camera. So I'll just close everything up here just to be safe. So the first thing I'm going to do is, so we'll want a little camera button on our, we're going to modify our profile activity. We want to add a little button with this icon, and then we're going to add an image view that will display the image when we use the camera. So first things first is let's add a little icon into our drawable resources. So under resource and drawable, let's add a new vector asset. I'll click on my clip art and I'll just search for camera. So I'm going to use this, which one do I'm going to use this one, this photo camera. So I want to add this image first to the drawable resources, and then we can create a button that uses this image. And, oh, I want to grab my color, my purple color. I'll cancel and just, hang on a second. I'll go to my colors. I'll get my purple color here, this one, my purple 700, because I want to use that hex value as the background color of my button, just like we have for the other buttons. So I'll do that again, right-click new, vector asset. Again, I'll search for camera, pick my photo camera, and I'll change my color to use, oh, I had it right here in my color swatch. So I'll use my purple. So it's going to be IC baseline photo camera 24. The name doesn't really matter, you can rename it. But I want it to be my purple color and my camera image. So I'll add that asset. And then I want to open up the profile, activity profile.xml. And I'm going to add a couple of items here. I'm going to add it between my email text view and my terms text view. I will put this code up for you. So I'll create a button. My width, I'll create a dimension called camera size. And I'll set that for as both the width and height. The ID, I'll call it capture button. And for the background, we'll use our new photo camera button that we just added. And we'll center it horizontally in the middle of the activity. So start to the start of the parent, end to the end of the parent, and our top will be to the bottom of our email text view. So it shows me the icon here, which is good. I've got to create this camera size dimension resource. So I'll create that and I'll set it as 24 dp. So I'll just create my dimension, my dimen value resource, and I'll give it a value of 24 dp. And then underneath this, I'll put on an image view. So our width will wrap the content. I want to constrain the height because I don't want it to overlap the terms and conditions at the bottom. So with a little trial and error, I figured out that I'll just create a dimension called profile image height. I figured out about 300 dp is an appropriate height that will fit. I'll give it an ID of profile image view. Again, start to start of parent, end to end of parent. So it's centered horizontally, and our top will be to the bottom of our camera capture button. I'm going to create another dimension value resource. This one will be 300 dp. And I will throw this up on Pastebin. So there's your link to our button and image view. Also, because we're just working with the profile activity today, I want to make sure that once we sign in, we automatically go to the profile activity just to save us a step. So if I open up my sign in activity KT file, right now on line 48, if we have a successful sign in, right now we're loading the list activity. So just to save us a step, I'm going to change that intent. So after we sign in successfully, it'll go to the profile activity. At the end of class, I'll undo this, but this will just save us a quick step for now. So you can grab the code from Pastebin, and you may want, I would recommend changing the intent in your sign-in activity. So after a successful login, we just go straight to the profile. So I'm going to start this up. And the only visible change for us should be after I log in, we should get the camera button on the profile screen underneath the username and email address. The image view is going to be empty to start with. That's fine. Is everybody with me so far? Any questions? Okay, good. I like to check. I know sometimes I get going a bit too quickly. So to save myself time, I'll use Google Sign In because I can just click. So now I just get a camera button here. It doesn't do anything. The image view is here, but there's no image supplied. So this is what we want so far. So now we need to start to, before we can write any of the Kotlin code to handle the click event here, we've got to do a bunch of configuration. So that means adding the feature list and the permission list in Android Manifest. It also means setting up an XML resource file to point to the file path where we're storing images. And then we have a little additional configuration in Android Manifest. So let's open up our manifest. So we've already got a user's permission from last week that when we added the maps activity, Android Studio generated automatically. So this is going to be camera and storage features and permissions. Oops. So first we're going to use feature. We're going to use android.hardware.camera.any. And it says any because some Android devices have more than one camera. There may be a front camera and a back camera. So our app is going to allow them to use any camera on the device. And here we're going to set the android.permission.camera. And we're going to say it's required. We don't have to make it required. Technically, someone could use our restaurator without putting a photo in their profile. But I'm just going to set it as required. And then we're going to use permission. So we want the camera. So we can load the camera and snap a photo. Using the camera on its own is not enough, though. If we're going to take a photo, we want to be able to save that image. And then later on, we want to be able to retrieve and display that image. So we need two other permissions that have to do with the file system. So we need to be able to write to external storage. Otherwise, we can't save any photos that we take. And likewise, we need to be able to read external storage. Otherwise, we can take the photo, but we can't actually display it or retrieve the path so we can save to Firebase. Okay, so these are the permissions we're going to use. Any camera in the hardware, we're getting permission for the camera and permission to read and write external storage. These can go basically anywhere in the manifest. Typically, they're at the top before the application tag usually. I'll also put it up here on Pastebin if that helps. Some of you've probably already started exploring some of these other permissions for your assignment based on the functionality of your app. You may have used some of these other permissions already. In fact, I know from marking assignment 2, several people's apps, for example, use the contacts already, which is great. Now, we will need to come back to Android Manifest and make some other changes. In order to use the external storage, we need to do a little more configuration. We need to configure a file provider, and that happens in here. But we've got to set up an XML resource file first. So once I've added the features and permissions in Android Manifest, we'll leave it open because we're going to come back here. And I'm going to right-click my resource folder, and I'm going to choose a new Android resource file. the file name is going to be file_path.xml. And under resource type, I'm going to pick the last option, which is XML. So this is going to create an XML subfolder. And create the file called file path. I think I'm going to take out the root element if this will let me. So the directory name will be XML. The resource type is XML. File_path. Okay, so the root element, I think we'll try this, is paths. Sorry. We'll try it this way. This is the root element in the file. There'll be an XML node called paths. So it gives me this. We don't need this XML namespace. I'm actually going to take it out. And in here, what we're going to set up is an external files path. So we've got to give it a name and put in a path. So our name is going to be images, and our path is going to be pictures. So here's our file path. So Android Manifest needs to use this path when it's reading and writing files. Okay. I'll leave this up for a second. Fairly simple. If you get a bunch of other XML template code in here, you can remove it. This is really all you need. So I'll leave this up for a minute. We'll go back to Android Manifest, and then we're going to configure our file provider that uses this file path resource. And then we'll take a break. Then we should be all set up. So when we come back, we can start writing the Kotlin code to actually invoke the camera, take a photo when our little photo button is clicked. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my Android Manifest. And I need to create a provider tag. This actually has to go inside of our application opening and closing tag. So nested in with the activities. So that here we're going to configure file provider for photos. So we're going to create a provider tag. Our authorities is androidx.core.content.fileprovider. So this is the class we're using. For our name, you should be using your app package. So com, for me, it's a com dot in front of the net. And then your app name. Okay, we'll come back to that in just a second. We may have to modify that. We want to set enabled to true and exported to false. And we want to grant URI permissions. So when we're reading and writing, we can locate photos, we can create them, and we can locate them using a URI. Oops. Probably gonna have to change line 60, that's okay. And then in here, we set our metadata, and this is where we point the file provider to this little XML file we just created. Android support And our resource is our so there's the configuration. Let me figure out what's going on here. My package is com.in front of the net.restaurator. Oops, oh, sorry, I flipped these two. I apologize. This is the name. This is the authority. There we go. I had flipped the name. So our app has the authority to handle the file management with the paths defined in here. So this would be your package name and your project name, which you can find up here. You can even just copy this. Whatever's in the package of the manifest, it will be that .file provider. So I'll save that. Now our application is configured to integrate, to use the file system for reading and writing image files using the path specified here. Okay, it's 11:53. I'm going to push what I've done up to GitHub right now. So if you're missing anything, ensure you use your package app name authorities. Okay, I'll push what I've done up to Git, and we will take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 12:05.